And what happened in 1912?
The Titanic.
What happened to the Titanic?
It got hit. No, it hit an iceberg.
Let's talk about history things. Hello and welcome back to my channel or podcast if you're listening to this as an audio. If you're new here, my name is Jessica Smith and I help you simplify home education so you can work wonders in your home. The past few weeks I've been talking about history, why we should be teaching it, how we should be teaching it, what we should be teaching, as in what books we should use. And today I'm going to talk about the things. Now, Charlotte said that children are most fitly educated upon books, living, rich narrative books, and things. Now, things is very scientific term on what we should be using. So what does she mean by things? Well, if it's in nature studies, she means the real things, like real plants and animals, not just pictures of them. Or when we're doing science, not just looking at maybe a video of a science experiment, but actually doing the science experiment. So what kinds of things would we use for history? Now, obviously, primary sources would be the biggest thing, right? The most important thing. We're looking at real photographs. We are maybe going to a museum, looking at real artifacts, not just pictures of artifacts. But there's a few other things that Charlotte Mason used to teach history. And they are timelines, century tables, book of centuries, as well as just a regular monthly calendar. I'm going to show you how I use those in my home. Now, if you aren't familiar with child development, which just as a side note, that was my major in college, was family studies and human development. So I have an idea of how children's brains work from my cognitive development class. One of the things is something that parents may not understand or know is that it takes a long time for children to understand the abstract concept of time. So they actually may not understand centuries and years until 10 to 12 years old. So timelines and all kinds of these things that we would want to use with our children for history aren't really going to work until about 4th or 5th grade, or they're not going to understand it. It's not going to do much. So what I like to do for my 1st through 3rd graders is to help them understand just days, weeks, and months. So this is actually my weekly calendar, but I have a monthly calendar for my boys, and I talk about it in my 4 notebooks that are essential to homeschooling, and I'll link that video if you're interested, where I talk about how we use a monthly calendar every day. They fill out the day of the month at the right day of the week, and it looks similar to this one, except it has the whole month and it's blank. So they fill in the days. So they know, okay, today is the 1st, tomorrow's the 2nd, yesterday was the 30th or the 31st. Every month they put in a new month. And over 3 years of doing this, they have a really good concept of how long a month is, how long a year is. And this is an important foundation for them to understand years when they get into 4th and 5th grade and they start studying ancient history. And if you missed my last videos on history, I highly recommend listening to those so that this all makes sense. Because in the other videos, I talk about why we're studying history and how you can teach it at home. Now, you can use a curriculum and use these principles on the curriculum you buy, but you could also make your own curriculum with everything that I'm teaching here based on where you live, based on your family's ethnicity and cultural heritage. You can make it based on your child's interests and the wide range of ages that you have in your family. That is my goal, to help you become a more confident teacher and teach intuitively, be able to teach based on your child's needs. So you can make your own history curriculum, or you can use these principles on a curriculum you already have. Now, these are the first things that you want to do. Once you had 3 years of filling in days, weeks, and months, your child hopefully has a good foundation of that smaller amount of time. Then I make a child's history table. It's their own history. Now I'm going to have all of these. I made these for my children in Canva. I'm going to have all these PDFs linked below if you're interested in getting those instead of making your own, but they're easy to make on Canva. So you have your child's own history. So your child's going to be about 9, 10 years old when you start doing their own history. So I just have a table of 9 or 10 for their years. And then in the columns, I have the years. And then in the rows, I have the child's name, and then I have their siblings, and then family, and then like their country or community or whatever you want. So then each year they're going to fill something in. So for the first year that they're born, so for my 9-year-old that we did this year, 2015, so he put I was born. And then for his brother, who is 2 years older, he says Sawyer is 2. And then for the other boys, he just put a 0 because they weren't born yet. For family, he put in some vacations that we went on or if we moved. And so what he's doing is he's seeing the progression of years in his own life. And that's really important for him to connect months to years than to his life. Oh, we lived in this area for 4 years and that took up half my life. So it's helping him put a concrete or this idea concretely, and then it's going to be easier for him to understand those years abstractly later on. Once he's done that, and that's about 9, 10 years old, then you start a history or a century table. So you're going to do that on a big scale. I'm sorry, this is really loud. If you're listening to this as a podcast, this is a century table or a century chart, and it is 10 by 10 table. So you have 100 squares for each year in the century. Now, I do this first with the child for the most recent century. So that would be 1924 to 2024 is what I would do for my son this year. I'm just going to set that down. And so he's going to go backwards. He's going to fill it out backwards and do something for each year all the way to 1924. So he's going to include a lot of family historical events like grandparents being born, married, World War II, and they may not know what that is yet, but that's okay. You're just helping them fill out things they know, maybe things they don't know, so that they have an idea of, oh, this is 100 years, and these are the things that happened in 100 years. They're getting an idea of 100 years. This is, again, a concrete example for them to use when they start learning 1,000 years, 2,000 years. They have to do things concretely before they can really understand them abstractly. And so I do that again, like at 9 and 10 years old. We fill it out so that he has an idea of what 100 years looks like. Now, once he's done that, then about, I would say 5th or 6th grade. Charlotte Mason started the Book of Centuries in 4th grade, and I think it just depends on the child. You don't have to start in 4th grade. You don't have to start in 6th grade. Start when you feel like your child is ready. A Book of Centuries is one of the notebooks that Charlotte Mason had that was not just meaningful busy work that children did, meaningless busy work that children did. It's a meaningful book that they were meant to keep throughout their whole lives, like a nature notebook. And I have one that I have been keeping too. This is how it works. I'm going to show you an example page from my son. So they are filling out whatever century they're learning about in history. On one side, there is just lines. So lines for every 5 years. So there's 20 lines, and they're going to fill out dates of wars, people being born, things being invented, anything that they personally find interesting and want to record. And then on the other side, there's a blank page for them to draw things like inventions, buildings, people, maps, whatever they want to remember to correlate with the dates on the other side of the paper. Now, if you're watching this, or if you're listening to this as an audio, you can check out the video link below and you can see what this looks like. So this is not just for history, and this is where I love about Book of Centuries. They can record things from science, from composer study, from artist study, from nature study, geography, anything and everything historical can go into this one book, and they're going to start seeing patterns, and they're going to start seeing connections between everything. And again, this is such a cool idea, and one of the things that I love most about Charlotte Mason's method is her Book of Centuries and her nature notebook. It's meaningful, it's really important, and we record in that once a week. And it's an afternoon activity, so my son's required to do it. He can record as much or as little as he wants. He just needs to record something. And I like to start when they are drawing pretty well. So we've done a few years of drawing lessons, and he feels confident he can draw maps or buildings or people or whatever he wants to record. Because if you begin recording in this before they are good at drawing, they're gonna really regret it, and you're gonna regret it because you're gonna have this beautiful book. I also like to give them some blank paper to practice on beforehand, draw in pencil and then in black ink. Now these pages in here, this book is from Riverbend Press. They're thick enough that you could do some dry brush drawing with watercolor if you wanted. They're very thick, but my son has chosen just to do paper or pencil and black ink. So that is Book of Centuries, and that is what they do as far as things for history. That is what they do. They do the century chart. They do the Book of Centuries. Now the cool thing is that these are tools, and you can use them for however you need. So the century chart that I showed you, I had my son fill that out for the most recent 100 years. But you could use one of those for every century that you're learning about, especially most recent history in American history. So you could do one for 1800 to 1900, which is what we started doing in the one that I just showed you. We were filling that out as we were learning about that time period. And they just draw a symbol for something. So for the Gettysburg Address, he drew a scroll with names on it. Or it could be a telescope for the Corps of Discovery, which we did for Lewis and Clark, just a symbol for that year, and you could put a little note underneath if you wanted as well. So those are some of the things that are used in history just to help children understand time and make a lot of connections with historical events. And if you missed the other videos, don't forget to look at those so that you can get a better picture of how history is taught at home. And if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll always be notified when a new episode comes out.